You look at them and you understand what do they see about the world, what has changed in the world. You need to be humble and you need to know that you're not the one that actually knows what changed in the world. It's they who know. And if you really listen to them and you really try to see what they see, it suddenly they kind of like put it in front of you. And I think that exercise of trying to get it like the ego down and not thinking that you are the one who knows what is changing in the world and how is it changing, but rather like trying to listen to them and find entrepreneurs who do know.
Welcome to another episode of the At Depth podcast. This is the show where we interview leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, funds, and family offices with one very simple purpose. We're here to explore the through lines that connect what we value to how we lead, how we invest, and how we build. My guest today is an investor and a builder with this wild engineering mind. He has led startups and he's done venture on both sides of the table. He grew up between Israel and London. He's going to talk more about that. He started coding at 9, which is a very interesting little tidbit or fact. He served in the army in Israel, has built companies both in the US and in Israel, and eventually launched his own venture funds a decade ago. This is the decade year. He backs founders early, but he also knows how to stay alongside people as they evolve, and companies as well. He has seen it all. He's seen the extraordinary returns. He's seen real failure. And I think he brings us this incredible long arc mindset. So we're going to talk about venture capital today with Nadav, and let's get going. It's time to find our depth.
Awesome, Ben. Well, what an intro. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, welcome. Well, I think that was the nice intro. I think people are going to be excited to kind of get more of that peeled back in the layers, but I want to start with something really fun, really human, and really immediate. So in the past 90 days, what's the most exhilarating thing that you've done?
Wow. I just want to say I live in California in the past almost 15 years. I've been visiting Tel Aviv a lot in the past year, and they've built a new surfing wave pool over there, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, like, there's like a new technology in the world. It's been around, I think, for 5 to 7 years around the world, and I've been exploring that a lot, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, I've been surfing since I was a kid and surfing in the ocean, but this new type of surfing is really, really interesting. It's unbelievable to see it actually happening. It's something that we've been dreaming a lot about throughout the years, and experiencing it has been life-changing for me.
Because you're a surfer. That's the one little piece that I think we're going to come back to about 19 or 20 times during this conversation. Before you talk about professionalism and life and history and kind of paint the picture of where you've been for the past few decades, tell that story. How did you come to surfing, and then when did you fall in love with it?
I grew up in Israel most of my childhood life and close to the beach, and then many of my friends started surfing when they were a little bit younger than I was, and I wanted to get into that as well. And somewhere around high school, I just took my friend's surfboard and went into the water. Obviously didn't know what I was doing and didn't know like that it was important to know what you're doing when you're surfing. So, it was like a nice experience, not an amazing one, not a terrible one. But then throughout high school and a little bit of the military days, and then surfing with my friends on the beach in Israel, which you get the Mediterranean Sea, you get like nice waves, but not amazingly good waves like you will get in an ocean, in the Pacific Ocean especially. So it won't be as powerful, it won't be as clean. So you need to really work out your skill sets. And then after the military, like many Israelis do, or most Israelis, like we go travel the world. So I went to Costa Rica and spent 3 months there, and all I wanted to do is like surf, eat well, sleep well, and do that and repeat. And that's when I really, really got to learn how to surf and get to love it like more than that, more than just like a hobby, and live life according to it in a way.
How did you break surfing down into elements that you could learn? I mean, because you went from self-taught absolute newbie. I've tried to stand up on a surfboard once in my life, and only once in my life. Walk me through the mindset, because I think this is sort of going to be a theme in this conversation. Walk me through the mindset of how you figured it out.
Well, I think surfing, that's what's so special about it, I think, is that you cannot just go out one time and try to stand up on a surfboard and do it. You cannot go for like a month and be able to do it. You need to actually dedicate a big part of your day-to-day life to it in some way. For me, it was like 3 months straight doing only that, even after that, you need to keep on living your life around it. So if there's like a good swell coming in, you need to be prepared and need to make sure that you can get out there. Living in California, it's much easier. You get good surf almost every day. Good enough, I would say. Growing up in Israel, it's very, very different. So you need to really like adjust your schedule to make sure that you actually catch it. And then even once you do that, there's a lot of people in the water. You need to be able to know what you're doing. You need to be able to catch a wave. You need to be in shape. You need to try a lot. And it's really, really hard. That's what's so fascinating to me about it, and just getting better at it all the time.
Let's sort of paint the picture. We don't need to spend too long on the timeline here, but maybe rough it in for us. So, young kid, Tel Aviv, learning to surf. There's this whole wonderful sort of engineering, army, London life story. And then maybe kind of take us briefly into that, and then this transition to becoming a Californian and really diving into Silicon Valley and how you really got into the whole world of venture and finding ideas and turning them into companies.
You mentioned London a few times. It was a small period of my life, but it was an important period. It was like when I was 3.5 years old, all the way to almost 6 years old. Those are very formative years of your life, I think. Especially now that I have kids, I can see how influential those years can be.
Yes, huge.
Yeah, on your entire life. So for me, it was very influential. I mean, like I grew up in London. I have a little bit of that, a British upbringing, but just a tiny bit. Then went back to Israel. As you mentioned, when I was 9 years old, I started coding with friends. It was back in the early 90s. So that was like Visual Basic. Sorry, even before Visual Basic, it was Basic, and it was Pascal. And it was like those type of programming. And, honestly, I don't know how me and my friends, when we were 9 and 10 year old, like learned how to do that. We were just playing around with computers, with those old computers, and we kind of learned it playing around. Like also in the 90s, the video games were not as engaging as they are today. So we spent a lot of time outside. So we were building stuff. So we were building like a tree house, and we were building modeled airplanes, and we were competing in competitions with like flying modeled airplanes. So getting into that become like, tinkering thinking of the engineering thinking. And it was like, it's kind of like ingrained in what I was doing. I think all of that kind of like brought me all the way to where I am today in building stuff and investing and understanding that. And then as an Israeli, everyone has to go through the military. And then in the military, I had a chance to actually be not on the front lines, but on the back office side, where I've delved into a lot of data, a lot of analytics, and understanding like how to deal and work with a lot of data. And that also like shaped a little bit of my thinking going into the future. And then after the army, as I mentioned, I traveled a little bit the world. I've got to see other places. I've got to experience other cultures. And I think this was also extremely important to the way that I've evolved and developed into an investor today, and just understanding, getting that perspective. And then I went to engineering school in Tel Aviv University. So I was studying engineering, industrial engineering and management, solving a lot of probabilities and stuff like that. So probability is ingrained in my mind. And then all of that shaped, what I'm doing today.
Create a little context. There's some extraordinary number of billions of dollars that have been in value that have been created by Israeli companies in the past year. And this is hazy knowledge for me. Are you familiar with this?
I mean, like, yeah, if you take even the past 2025, it was a year where Israeli exits, like only exits, were around 70 billion, $70 billion in exits. I think this is extraordinary. Yes, like 32 billion out of it is only one company, Wiz, that was acquired by Google. But still, there's another 5-10 companies that exited at the 2 billion. It's many times in cash. And during 2025, which was not an easy year in the tech industry. So that's a little bit of context. It wasn't like that. I've been part of the Israeli ecosystem. I've been part of it in one way or another in the past 20 plus years. And I've seen it evolve over time, and it's completely new place now. And I think in terms of money coming into the ecosystem, just more than ever.
It's an incredible skill, I think, though, to have deep context, experience, and knowledge, like cultural and technologically sound context, and have that in your back pocket, though. I mean, here you have this incredible country that's building wonderful things and realizing value in incredible ways. And I would imagine it'd be hard for just any old person, like just take me. It'd be very difficult for me to understand that. and like find a way into it. Is that right? I mean, I assume it's not just like, hey, you could figure Israel investing out, just go for it.
Oh, definitely. Like I do, like figure Israel investing, it's definitely not easy. Figuring out like venture investing, I think it's not easy. It's a tough challenge for anyone. Just venture in general, but like even if you focus on like venture investing in Israel, it's completely different, right? And it's also like changing and evolving all the time. As someone who grew up in Israel and worked in Israel a little bit and then moved to the US 15 years ago and been working in the US, I can understand both cultures. I can see the things that are similar, the things that are very, very different. It's a very different type of business environment on many fronts. There's a lot of similarities between Silicon Valley and Tel Aviv. I mean, like the ecosystem, how information flows, how like things that are happening. Like during the COVID days, you've seen a lot of the differences. You've seen Israel come into working in the office much, much faster. It's a very like culturally kind of like you work and your friends are from your work and you're like experiencing that. There's a lot of nuances on the business side and on the investing side that you need to understand generally about venture, but also specifically about Israel. And even if you talking about like the connection of like the different type of technologies that come out of Israel and get commercialized in the US or elsewhere around the world. It's layers of nuance that I can also dive deep into each one of them for hours.
We're going to get to this moment where I want you to sort of begin teaching me and some of our listeners about venture. But before we do, I want to hang on this point for just a second because you brought up something interesting, which is about this after COVID coming back to the office, like the remote work era that we've experienced or that was thrust upon us. And looking at you, you travel around and you go and you spend time face to face with people. There is something valuable in face to face time. And yet people don't want to go into the office. And you just mentioned that as a piece of sort of Israeli wise thinking, or maybe it's an edge for them. Let's explore that a little bit. I'm really curious. Do you think it's important to be together as human beings in real time, face to face?
I think yes. I mean, I'm over 40, so I've been in the era before COVID, working in the office, and I know what I've learned from working inside an office and those relationships. I've lived through the COVID era and I've lived after the COVID era, right? So I don't know if I sound like an old person that is like talking about, yes, it's important. But, honestly, I do think it's important. Like, even when you're comparing the two things, like I've seen some of our companies that are global companies, they have some part of their office in Israel, part of their offices in the US. We've seen how hard it was to get people back into the office in the US and how easy it was in Israel. It's more culturally, I think. It wasn't that they were trying. In Israel, it just happens naturally. But the benefits that we've seen from that, and some of those companies decided to change their strategy about how they operate in the US. And they've made dramatic and big changes to their San Francisco location, to their entire US headquarters and offices, and how they operate. It created a lot of differences that I've seen firsthand. I think it's very important to be in the same room with people. You don't need to be with them all the time, but you need the FaceTime. You need the things that happen, the serendipity that happens when you're inside the same space with other persons. Cannot happen on a Zoom call, because a Zoom call has a start time and an end time, and you come prepared to the meeting. You're conducting the meeting and then you finish the meeting. There's no coming into a room. Some people are late. You're talking about something that is not related. It happens, but on a much smaller scale. There's no before going into the room, you see them at the kitchen because you're preparing coffee and you're talking. And then like what happens in the time before the meeting and after the meeting, many times is the most important part, not necessarily the meeting itself. And many times it's because you sit next to someone and you overhear something, which you would not hear over a Zoom call because the Zoom is not started yet, because it's going to happen in 5 hours from now, because you're in a different office, because you're at home, because of whatnot, right? Like there's so many different things that you overhear something and they say, oh, I know how to solve it. And then you can just walk around the table to the other person and talk to them and say, hey, I can help you solve that. Or the other way around, like if you have a question that you need some help, do you send a Slack message? Do you send an email? Versus just calling someone and say, hey, can you help me with that?
Is this something you encourage? in the companies that you work with?
We don't talk about it like, very specifically and encourage that. I think we might talk about it strategically. I'll give an example of something that I do encourage is many times in the startup world and venture, it's like you go through those phases and the company changes over time relatively quickly from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 employees, and then from 20 to 80. And each one of those changes, you want to stop, take a step back, and do something together, go for an offsite and just like celebrate the moment. So those are, I think, like the things that we talk about and encourage are those kind of things. We happen to talk about what I was just describing right now at times, but not specifically. But if you're asking me, will I encourage that? Should I encourage that? Yes, absolutely yes. I think this is how the magic happens, right? That's where the most important things happen. One last thought is that we've seen it now happening more often with all those new AI young companies. They all spend 24/7 like in their office, and they're doing that in the US, in Israel, everywhere.
So it's almost like we've innovated ourselves back into the office. You said something interesting about the magic happening, and the magic is kind of an interesting lead in, an interesting concept to me. I would love for you to just tell us what venture is, because to me, it feels like an educated magic trick where you're trying to sort of take something ordinary and vacuous like a hat, and you're going to reach in there. And the great magicians know how to pull the rabbit out. The really great magicians know how to pull like a paddle or an oar out. And the best magicians know how to like pull a building out of the hat. But it seems like it all starts in the hat. So like with that sort of metaphor, like what is venture? What are you trying to do?
The magic is the right analogy that I would use there, but I think it's like to see what's possible and the opportunities, right? And make room for the opportunities to arise.
To see what's possible. Yeah, I like this idea. To see what's possible. Yeah.
Or create the room for the possibilities, right? So this is a good example. If you are by design remote only companies, and it's nothing wrong about it, we have in our portfolio amazing companies that are remote first, but they have ways to actually overcome that as well. But if you are by design remote, if I take the first example, you sometimes limit those opportunities for the unknown to happen. But if you by design create the room for those opportunities to happen. So if you take it into venture, it's like you invest in companies and knowing that not all of them will be successful. Or in other words, you know that some of them will fail, drastically fail, go to zero. It's something that most investors, most asset classes don't feel comfortable with. But in venture, it's very much the bread and butter of venture. And it's not because you're looking for failure. It's just because you're trying to create the room and the opportunity to see what's possible, even in the places that it's not comfortable. It's outside of your comfort zone. It's also a comfort zone because of, I don't know, it's because it's a field that you're not well versed in, because it's like AI and it's like you don't know what's going on there and it's scary for many different reasons. And you try to create the opportunity for those possibilities. And if you do it in the, like I would say, if I take the analogy of the magician, it's like the difference between the rabbit or the whole building. You want to make sure that you're targeting the whole building, which means you need to think about it like you don't want to create opportunities for just mediocre things to happen. You want to create the room and the opportunities for extraordinary things to happen. So if you think about long tail, fat tails type of distributions, it's very unlikely for it to happen. Because unlikely, or like 1% of chances for things to happen, it's not good on its own. The real question is like, in the 1% this thing happens, how big can it be? If it's extremely big, 1% of something that is extremely, extremely, extremely big can create an outsized return or outsized outcome for in the venture world. And that's, I think, the difference, right? Like you want to see what's possible and identify what's possible and make the room for things that are unlikely to happen to actually be in your arsenal of opportunities. But you want to make sure that those are outsized returns, outsized outcomes. So if you, in hindsight, look at all those big companies, and many of us have lived through watching those big companies form, from Google to Facebook to Amazon to OpenAI, Uber, etc. It always goes from that, like at the beginning, when it starts, it's not obvious that it's going to be that big. When it starts, it feels a little bit weird. It feels different. It feels like uncomfortable. Like walking into a car that's a random person is driving, that you don't know that you got matched on an app. Now it's like second nature. Now you're walking to a car in San Francisco that there's no driver in it. I think we live a little bit in the future now and seeing this, but it's all of those things are not feeling natural, not feeling comfortable, or a little bit outside of our comfort zone. And do we feel comfortable in letting them in and embracing them?
I want to go back to the surfing analogy. There's this idea that as you become a better surfer, you're learning to read the waves. You're using all your experiences, and every wave that you've surfed up to that point is informing you on reading the water and seeing the next wave coming towards you. So I see that as being very similar to this, but how do you learn to see the opportunity? I mean, maybe talk about in your own mind, how have you built the sense and the eye and the ears to be able to read, like, okay, if the whole game is we've got to pull the building out of the hat or ride the big wave and ride it well. We are here to ride the biggest wave possible. How are you assessing that wave when the water is just literally just starting out as little ripples or small waves and the swell's building? Like that takes some skill. How have you built that skill over the years?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, you need to actually go out there, right? Like if you don't go out, you'll never ride that wave. You'll never invest in that company, right? So you need to throw the
Right.
dice, I would say, right? Like you
Yeah.
cannot hit six if you don't throw the dice. And I think this is a limiting factor for many, many investors trying to get into the venture world. They either don't do it or this is one. And then if they don't do it, they will never be able to get it. They sometimes do it, but in the wrong conditions. So you need to go out when the conditions are right as well. So if like there's an actual swell coming in, so you can, just many people can just like see that there's a swell. But then like you don't want to throw the dice or try to catch any type of wave. You want to find the right one that you can actually ride. Nobody else will take it from you, etc. And to do that right, you actually need to know to see how the ocean is behaving. And you would never be able to do it if you don't go out there and learn. Right. So it's a skill that you learn over time, and it requires also courage and endurance and trying and failing and getting hit on your head by paddling out. Anyone who tried surfing have experienced that. I'm absolutely sure getting like hit by the ocean. It's not easy. It's similar, I think, to investing, right? Many people are just like trying without necessarily knowing what they're doing, which is great. I mean, like it's a great start, but going out with someone who knows what they're doing can help you kind of like adjust and feel comfortable in that uncomfortable territory is sometimes, I would say, a better way to do it. And for me, I think a similar inventor, it's the beginning. You have a sense, you have kind of like a connection, a bond with the founders. You look at them and you understand what do they see about the world, what has changed in the world. You need to be humble and you need to know that you're not the one that actually knows what changed in the world. It's they who know. And if you really listen to them and you really try to see what they see, it's suddenly they kind of like put it in front of you. And I think that exercise of trying to get it like the ego down and not thinking that you are the one who knows what is changing in the world and how is it changing, but rather like trying to listen to them and find entrepreneurs who do know. It's a first step. But then it's not sufficient necessarily, right? Like you want to see that they're like good people, that they're trustworthy, that they work hard, they learn, iterate, change. I'm looking for the founders who are able to learn and change extremely fast. Some founders just learn all the time. They never change. It's not helpful. Some founders change all the time, but not based on their learnings. Some founders change based on their learnings, but not fast enough. So I'm looking for the ones that can learn and change extremely fast. And that's not easy to find, but it's something that I've learned over the years that this is the only factor that I've seen connecting between the ones that became really successful.
This is interesting because what you just started to do is you just started to see. And that's based on experience. Like you said, there's a specific blend of being able to change and iterate, but then also to change and iterate intelligently. That's important. And you're looking for that connection. What are some of the other things? I mean, I would say you're giving away free advice, but it's not free advice. You have to be able to see it in order to see what's possible. But what are the other things that you feel like are key markers, those little tells or those little indicators that someone is capable of achieving the big vision, that world change, that pulling the building out of the hat type result? What are the things that tell you?
The nuance is not only learn intelligently, it's learn intelligently fast enough. Because it's like, it's all those three. And I think all those three are stuff that I've seen present at all of the extremely successful founders that have built companies to generate hundreds of millions of dollars in annual recurring revenues and more. It's hard to say because every one of them is different, right? It's just like I didn't see any other correlation or connection between success and what they've done. Other than that, this is the one that I can definitely say, like, this is, from my experience, highly correlated. Another thing that I would say that I've seen that is helpful to understand, I don't know if it's like it relates to like pulling the entire building out of the hat, but it definitely relates to how well your relationship and their relationship with others will be, which is how open are they? How open are they to any type of interaction? I've seen like very successful founders are just like, they don't care who they talk to. They will be helpful. They will help them. They will engage in the conversation, no matter who they are, with their company. They'll sell all the time. They may be judge you later, but they'll first engage you and they'll be open. And if you tell them something, they'll say, oh, interesting, and they'll explore it. So this is very, very telling, I think, to see those founders who are not holding themselves back, but are actually open. This is another thing that I would say that helps me understand how is my experience with this founder will be over time.
The over time concept is interesting. As I see this starting to form, you've got to be able to see what's possible, and that takes practice. And then once you start to see, you jump into this founder. The founder can have a great idea, but unless that person is able to execute on it, the idea is just worthless, right? So the quality of the idea has to be high. The quality of the founder has to be high, especially in the early days. And then at that point, you're creating this environment. Like you said, there's a huge humility in the sense that you don't try to become the expert and rule through them. You sit back and you say, great, we've got a good idea, good person with high potential for big success. And then there's this dance where you're removing your ego, as it were, far enough back to where you can create that environment for success. And so maybe describe some of that environment. Like, what are the conditions that help those people really take that idea and turn it into the massive thing?
Many times it's helping them to see what's possible, right? Because they have this vision, which has to be extremely big. So I like to ask that question, what kind of company are you building in 30 years from now? Many people are getting kind of like thrown off when I ask them that because like they have not thought about 30 years, but some do. Like, it's amazing. Like, once you ask them that question and they have, it's amazing. So they have that vision, right? They know what they want to build. They know what type of company they want to be in 30 years. And they also know it's not like necessarily going to get there that easily. So this they have, but many times they don't necessarily dare to ask for what they actually think they need. So encouraging them to, this is big, right? Yeah, many times you see that they're like a little bit too conservative. Now, it's not a bad thing. It's a good trait. It's like, I want to see that, right? Because like you want them to be conservative with a lot of different things. You want them to be diligent with a lot of different things. But you do want to help them. And you asked about the environment. So you want to create that environment of like, wait, but what if you go to this type of investor and these investors actually know how to write larger checks? Would that be helpful? Maybe the answer is no, and that's fine. Or not right now, and that's also fine. But maybe the answer is like, oh, I didn't think about it. Am I ready for it? And they're like, I don't know, like, let's see, are you ready for it? And then you start to like think about it and you're like, oh, we do need to invest more in this in order to get that. And then it's like, if that logic makes sense, I think it would make sense to those investors. And I think it's very familiar in Silicon Valley, very non-familiar outside of Silicon Valley. You can start seeing that changing in the past 10 years and you see it more outside of Silicon Valley as well. But I think in Silicon Valley, it's very, very ingrained in the culture and the business and the way that venture in business is being happening here. So how do you create that environment for them to think about like what's possible and to see what's possible for them to achieve those visions that they have? It always has to be combined with like the necessary, not sufficient, which the necessary is like to do the hard work, to execute, to frugal and just don't spend a lot, like all those basic business stuff, right? It seems from the outside, I think, for many investors that Silicon Valley are just like throwing money at the problem and like doing that kind of thing. No, I've seen the best founders, they're not doing that. Sometimes they kind of like entertain a little bit of that, but it's not happening in a systemic way because otherwise they won't be able to build a business. And especially in today's market, you don't see it at all and not in the same way. I mean, like you do see it a little bit in pockets, like with AI and other stuff. And I'm trying to kind of distance myself from that. But many, many, many good founders are creating the environment of like hard work, coming into the office every day, right? right? Like being very diligent with who they hire, what do they do, what do they focus on. Another type of environment, like creating the environment for them, is helping them to be comfortable with focusing on one thing at a time. Many times, yeah, it's hard, right? Like it's hard for all of us. It's hard for me too. That's why I'm an investor. But for the founders, it's really, really important. And when they do that, it's magic. This is the magic.
I want some of this magic. Can we just hang here for a second? Because there is this, I mean, we live in a time where the attention economy is worth dollars, like hard dollars. And so everything around you is trying to grab your attention. It's something that you own that a lot of people actually don't pay to acquire. And so culturally and globally, we live in an attention deficit sort of period. And you're just telling me that focus is a key component to their environment. You've walked this journey with people. Like, how do people, especially in a business in startup mode, which is hectic, it's crazy, there's a million different things. How does focus happen in that environment?
So, in two ways, I think. One, very good founders, CEOs, manage to delegate. And this is a hard thing to do. The ones that manage to delegate, they can focus on one thing at a time because they delegate everything else. So if they need to fundraise right now, they don't really deal with every other piece of the business. They focus only on that. But the only way that they can actually do it is if they delegate their work to others. So hire the right people and delegate, right? It helps them focus. That's what I've seen. Another way is in the startup world, it's a combination, right? But when you as a leader communicate what's the goal, you need to be focused on one goal and communicate that to your team. However, in the startup world, it's really important to learn and change and iterate fast. So how do you do the two things at the same time? So even if you're focused for one day on one thing, it's still focused. And then you change it on the other day. It's still like you have done a focused exercise on one thing that is very important for the business. Now, I don't suggest that this is what they do all the time, right? But I'm just trying to have the two commingle and live together. And it's the ability to actually, how do you work with the people that you hired and have them feel comfortable in focusing on one thing and then also changing when needed. Sometimes it's changing the work that they do, because in the startup, in the early days, all the employees are doing everything, right? Like everyone is doing everything. And then if you're doing everything, so one day you're on marketing, one day you're like on sales. Yes, I mean, like you do both. And then over time it grows and focus, but then still you always work with the two things at the same time.
I'm kind of distilling it down here as we go, but if you're going to be distracted by lots of things, and let's say all the things are important, the key is if you're going to be working on it, then focus on it. Like focus on that thing for the day, give it your attention, cancel out the micro distractions. And if you're going to be focused on something, whether it's truly globally important or not to the goal, because the goal might change tomorrow, if you're going to commit to it, then set things aside and commit to it. And maybe it's raising capital, maybe it's sales, but turn off your email, turn off the noise, and be focused in what you're doing. And I like this idea of communicating and delegating as being essential sides of the coin as well. I've seen a lot of people, I mean, myself, I find it very difficult to delegate in a clear way. It's easy to say, oh, hey, can you take this? But if you can say, hey, can you take this? And here's a smart goal for you. Here's what I need. Here's the day I need it by. Here's what I'm expecting for quality. And if you get stuck, go talk to this person. Like, that's an incredible way to delegate.
Exactly. And I think when you see it in leaders, that's when you know that they know what they're doing, they're good at what they're doing, and they can focus on one thing at a time because they can delegate. If it's sales, it's like you focus on sales and then you delegate everything else. Will you get fundraising communications from potential investors coming in? Yes, but you have to say no to that, or you have to delegate it to someone else.
Behold the balance beam that we're all dangling on. It's so difficult. You know, you've had some incredible successes, and I'd love for you to kind of paint the picture here of a big success and then also a total flop that you've experienced in your time leading these kinds of investments.
None of them is an overnight success, and many of them looks like an overnight success, but it's how do you do an overnight success? You work hard for 10 years and then you publish it, right? That's the way. We had multiple companies that I've invested in the past 10 years that became big, making hundreds of millions of dollars in their annual recurring revenues, from honeybook.com to placer.ai, netlify.com. A company that we invested through an SPV was Open Door that went public that got to 18 billion, then went down, like dramatically. We've seen all of that, right? By the way, each one of those companies wasn't easy for them at any point in time. It was hard all the time.
The whole way.
The whole way. Even now, we've been dreaming of getting to $100 million ARR, and we thought 10 years ago, if we get to $100 million ARR, we'll IPO. Well, guess what? We're like at 200 and we'll keep on waiting for the IPO market to open up. And the flip side is you kind of like starting the company, you get all this adoption. The whole market they have the trend, the big data analytics trend. Today we call it AI. Every time we call it something else, everybody's jumping at you and like throwing money at you. And then you're stuck at $1 million or $2 million or $3 million ARR and you can't continue and you slowly die out. And the company have done okay. It's not easy to get to that even. And then you go away. And then some companies, you grow, and then the founders do not have the stamina to, or don't want, not judgmental way, but they prefer to sell the company and they sell it to a big brand name like Autodesk or Microsoft or whatnot. And they continue the journey over there. And this is fine. I mean, like the returns are not the returns that you aspire for as a venture investors, but this is part of the business. And you're supporting that as a venture investor because this is part of the business. It's just sometimes the failure is like me choosing to work with the wrong people, that I do the best that I can to work with the right people, but sometimes I'm wrong on that. And it wasn't a good fit. I thought it was a good fit, and I should not have done that decision to begin with. I don't want to judge it in hindsight, but I'm striving to the fact that everything that comes in the beginning, all the analysis that I do and the decision making is the best possible decision. Sometimes I make the best possible decision, but the outcome is not good. And that's fine. That's part of that.
You're so calm talking about failure. It seems like it's just natural. It's just as natural as breathing. We succeed, natural. We fail, natural.
I have to say that it's easier to talk about failure in a calm way when you also had success, but it's necessary to talk about failure in a calm way in any scenario, because in venture, it's a big part of the process. I know a lot of founders that failed once, twice, third, and then on the fourth company hit it big. That became like a really, really big company, but they would never be able to actually build such a big company if they have not learned through the first 2, 3, 4 failures.
I feel like it's time in the conversation to take a little bit of a practical turn. I think you need to tell us, what is AdInc? AdInc is your business, and it's all about seeing what's possible at inception, inflection, and then beyond even those two parts. It's a boutique investing avenue. You guide investors and founders through their venture journeys. So this is for someone who is not looking to surf alone. They want to go out and surf with a very small group and experience this journey. And you're out there saying, like, here's a wave that's possible, and teaching them to see, while also just sort of teeing up the waves too. Tell us a little bit about AdInc.
I invest across venture, basically. If it's early stage, growth, late, secondaries, other venture funds, venture capital funds. I've been investing in the past 10 years in all of those, right? I've been doing that. So not only that I was doing it, I've learned a lot from it. And I think what I've learned the most out of this is that it's not about the deal flow. Many think it is. I think it's about the execution more than anything. How do you get into the best deals that you want to get into? Not the best deals that everybody thinks that are the best deals. How do you get out? How do you sell? Many people don't think about it. Like, how do you get out in different markets? How do you navigate those different markets? My role, it's like guiding not only the founders that I work with, but guiding the investors that invest with me through the venture journey. It's not only the journey for me or for the founders, it's also for them. So I think that's my role is in the ecosystem, is like, how can I do that in a good way that can generate great results and great outcomes for all the parties that are involved in that. And I like to go a little bit offbeat. So if everybody's doing one thing, I like to go elsewhere, right? It's easier to look at the opportunity set when there's not a lot of noise and to see what's possible. And I want to help investors see what's possible. I want to help the founders see what's possible. And I want to help create the environment for me to see what's possible. And then I think like what I've done through the past 10 years and I'm going to do in the next 10 years is just keep on doing it, basically to execute on it. And the execution part is really, really, really hard. You need to understand how to execute it. Sometimes the edge comes from speed, Not always, sometimes it is. And it's not necessarily natural for many investors in many other asset classes. Sometimes it's come from restraint, like smaller checks, not larger checks. Also counterintuitive. Sometimes the edge comes from the structure. You do a secondary plus a primary. Sometimes it's come from a relationship that you build with another VC and building on opportunities together, or investing in other VCs. Sometimes investing in other VCs, some of the VCs that I've invested in have done better than some of the companies that I've invested in terms of returns. It's counterintuitive, but in the venture world and navigating that venture world, there's a lot of things that are very, very different. And the time horizon and how do you navigate those different vintages, all of this come together like to that kind of expertise. And that's what we're trying to do with AdInc. It's basically help guide the investors and the founder through those venture journeys.
The surfing analogy to me is perfect as far as keeping so many of these simple ideas in mind for me. It's like, we're going to see what's possible. There's this journey. It's a small group of people. You don't want to go surf places where everybody is. So there's this little offbeat, like, oh, we're going to find this little hidden break over here on this corner of the cliffs. Before we wrap, Nadav, if someone listening wanted to be helpful to you right now, or come alongside wherever you're headed, what would that look like? Where are you going, and what kind of people should reach out to you, and how would they do that?
I like to build deep relationships with people over time and with people who see the world in a way that I see it as well. So where it's a good fit for them and for me. And it means patience, slow, thoughtful, deep thinking, and in a way that is many times not obvious, not what everyone else is doing, in a ways that is a little bit different, a little bit offbeat. It's not a fit for everybody. I'm not investing in a hyped company that everybody wants to get into. That's not what I'm doing. When I work with other people, I want them to not expect for me to do that. Or if it's a founder, I don't want founders to tell me the story that everybody's waiting to hear from founders right now. I want them to tell me their story and why they're so unique and different. And I like that. I think that's where the opportunity is. And similar with the investors, I think investors who work with me have a similar view of the world about that. The opportunities are not easy to see, and it's not easy to execute on them, and it's not where everybody is looking.
Nadav, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to find depth with me. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I feel like it could just keep going and keep going. And let's do another one in the future. I think there's more depth to be uncovered here.
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful. In this conversation, we talked about overcoming adversity, communicating clearly to each other, setting goals, staying focused, adapting your goals, being the kind of person that's easy to be with. I love that picture of a founder that you set. I think there's a lot of power in saying these things out loud. And I love the image of water. I love this picture of surfing the wave and all the nuance to seeing what's possible and having the skill that when that big wave comes, to be able to write it. And it's cool to talk to someone who's an experienced writer in the venture world. So thank you. If something here resonated with any of you listeners or raised a question that you're carrying, we touched on a lot of interesting topics. Clearly the topic about focus deeply resonated with me. If something sort of pinged you, just shoot me an email, ben@pivotal.com, Pivotol. I'd love to continue the conversation, explore your journey with you. But thanks, Nadav. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Ben. Really appreciate you inviting me for that. And congrats on the podcast and on everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for joining us at Depth. Thanks for joining us for this intentional conversation at Depth. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a moment to subscribe and follow along. You can do this at the@depthpodcast.com. Again, that's the @depthpodcast.com. You'll find new episodes, show notes, and more conversations with entrepreneurs who are building what really matters. Until next time, keep going deeper and keep building at depth.